Hello everybody, today we're doing a reply video again. I just felt like needlessly attacking someone else and picking apart their arguments. And who better to make a video about than Facts and Logic Man himself, Ben Shapiro. We're gonna have a look at his video titled Ben Shapiro Destroys Karl Marx in 60 Seconds. I thought about how to do this for some time and I decided to just show you his entire video here, so there's no accusing me of taking things out of context. Interestingly, his video was uploaded like that to Ben Shapiro's own channel. Usually the Ben Shapiro Destroys X videos are made by some fan with 50 subs and usually taken out of context, but apparently this is the intended experience uploaded by Ben Shapiro himself, so he clearly doesn't think that we need to know the context to this. That being said, here is his video.
This is the philosophy of collectivism, the philosophy that says that human beings suffer because the Judeo-Christian system expects too much of us individually. Judeo-Christian philosophy expects us to struggle, to strive. Judeo-Christian philosophy demands that we do our best and that we act virtuously on the individual level so that we can feel secure without invading each other's rights. The Judeo-Christian tradition says that with freedom comes responsibility. Collectivist philosophy, however, thinks differently. They expect us to give our individual striving up. No more striving, no more struggle. All we have to do is trade our individual responsibility for the comfort of collective power. Collectivist philosophy points out that individual virtue isn't natural. It is a struggle. And we can avoid that struggle by handing over all power to a nanny state. Judeo Christianity says you're free and therefore you must give. Collectivist philosophy says you are unfree and thus the state must take on your behalf.
Alright, where do I begin? Maybe with the fact that he doesn't mention Marx once. Pretty brave for a video which supposedly destroys Karl Marx. The video is generally kind of lacking in argumentation. It's just collectivism is this and Judeo-Christian values is that. Like literally all sentences are either about collectivism or Judeo-Christianity. Mentioning this is all he does. And that's a problem because there isn't a single argument in there. So let's have a look at what kind of things he says. According to Ben, features of collectivist philosophy are that it says that humans suffer because the Judeo-Christian system expects so much, that it thinks differently from Judeo-Christianity, that it expects you to give up individual striving, that it wants no more striving or struggling, that we have to trade individual responsibility for collective power somehow, that it says that individual virtue is natural and that a nanny state should do it. Also it says that you're unfree, apparently. And the one Ben prefers, Judeo-Christianity, says that you need to struggle and strive, that it demands that we do our best and that we act virtuously and that we can feel secure without invading each other's rights. It says that with freedom comes responsibility and it says that you are free and that you must give. Something, I don't know what, the video ends there. That's a lot of assertions and we'll have a closer look at those towards the end. For now, let's try to figure out what these assertions are supposed to tell us. I would argue that he's trying to make collectivism look bad. And further, I would say that he pretty obviously thinks that Marxism is collectivism, or at least collectivist. We can tell because Judeo-Christian philosophy is his favorite useless concept. I will make a video on Judeo-Christian values eventually, probably in the style of my video about basic economics. Tell me in the comments if you want to see that. So, from a Marx-loving perspective, I have to defend this half and discredit this one, and then Marx is saved, right? No, not really, because Marx barely has anything to do with collectivism. Like, there is a connection, but it's very small. So I think my very first criticism, besides the fact that he doesn't make an argument and just makes two grocery lists of concepts which supposedly belong to collectivism and Judeo-Christianity without founding any of them on anything or even making arguments as to which one is his preferred system, is that his video shouldn't be titled that. It should be Ben Shapiro Destroys Collectivism. Or even better, Ben Shapiro names things and calls them collectivist or Judeo-Christian for no reason for 60 seconds without making any judgment or even telling us which one of the lists is the good one. But that's not as catchy. But hold on there, you may be saying, Marxism is collectivism. That's why he's arguing against collectivism here, you stupid liberal social justice warrior, snowflake hack, virtue signaling, keyboard warrior, Okay, chill out there, me. You sound like the lower tenths of my comment section, jeez. Let's address that. We continue with Marxism isn't collectivist. What the fuck, Ben? Collectivism, to simplify a lot, is any philosophy that places the well-being of the group above the well-being of the individual. For example, by expecting individuals to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. This could be why Ben disagrees with it. It may be that he's religious and thinks that God is the only thing we should work towards. This is just a theory, and we'll get back to the religious things later. Collectivism in general is a very complex concept. Like, we already know how Ben defines it, but it's more complex than handing power to a state. Like, we could define collectivism as any system that takes individuals and makes them work for the greater good of the whole collective. That's actually how it's usually defined. But this definition is kind of flawed because that also describes the US military. Like, that's an organization which has some higher goal, freedom or whatever they tell the recruits, and they expect the individual soldiers to die for that higher goal. But Ben Shapiro doesn't argue against the US military, does he? He likes the military. So maybe he isn't trying to speak against all collectivism, but just some of it? Like the title says, Marx. I think it's time that we have a look at the connection between Marxism and collectivism. Like, we already know what collectivism is, so the only question left is what is Marxism? I have a video on that topic, but very basically, Marxism is a philosophy and arguably an ideology, depending on how you define that word. Like, Marxism, very basically, is a tool to help you explain problems and injustices in the current capitalist system. People have suggested solutions to these problems, and the solutions are pretty much always socialist. But that's not Marxism. Remember it like this. Marxism tells you what's wrong with the world, socialism tells you how to fix it. So, how does this fit into collectivism at all? It doesn't. Marxism has nothing to do with collectivism. However, there's a connection there, because Leninism does feature collectivism, and sometimes Leninism is called Marxism-Leninism. And I think that Ben Shapiro heard the Marxism in that and assumed that what Lenin did was what Marx intended, or something like that. But I'm afraid that's not true. The collectivist ideals, like the new Soviet man, were all ideas of Lenin and his party, not of Marx. The reason it's called Marxism-Leninism is because it uses Marxist analysis to see problems and uses Leninist methods to solve them. That means Marxism-Leninism is built upon Marxism. But that doesn't mean that what Marxism-Leninism does is Marxism. So that's it. The only connection is one based on semantics and bad understanding. So I can conclude with 100% certainty that Ben's title is indeed wrong and he is indeed a buffoon. So what can we learn from the rest of this video? Not much really. He uses the concept of Judeo Christian philosophy a lot. It's never clear what he means by that, because it's just an arbitrary concept which is supposed to represent all good things. In a video by PragerU titled Why Has the West Been So Successful?, Ben explains a little more of these Judeo-Christian values. He says that Judeo-Christian values are the idea that there is a God, that there is absolute truth, and that the Ten Commandments were an example of these universal truths. Now, this is at least understandable. It's just religious and philosophical stuff. I'm sure there are plenty of philosophers who would love for me to argue against this God and this concept of universal truth, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to say, if you believe in a God and believe that the word of this God is a way to be objectively good or bad, that's fine by me. I just care about how this concept influences politics, because I'm more interested in politics than religion or philosophy. But there is a problem here. This explanation of what Judeo Christianity is flat out doesn't work with the way Ben uses it in this video. Like, he says that the Judeo Christian system says that we need to struggle and strive. Like, which commandment is that exactly? He says it demands that we do our best and act virtuously. I guess the act virtuously is kind of supported in the Bible. And it says that we can feel secure without invading each other's rights. And that with freedom comes responsibility. And it says that you are free and that you must give. Like, this just doesn't fit onto his own explanation of Judeo-Christianity. It doesn't sound like he's talking about religion, does it? That's because he's not. What he's talking about is the current societal order, free market capitalism. And now the lines make sense, because the free market does demand you struggle and strive. It needs people to give their best, and it relies on individual charity to keep the poor alive. The market is dependent on people not invading each other's rights and property. And with freedom comes responsibility. That's not a Bible quote, that's him quoting Reagan. the only line I can't make sense of is the one that says, "You are free and therefore you must give." Like, I've absolutely no clue what that's supposed to be. Like, maybe he means effort, because the free market demands that you put effort into existing or else you die? I genuinely don't know. But once you understand that he isn't talking about Judeo-Christian values, but about free market capitalism, you can make sense of his arguments, which seemed completely arbitrary at first. They still aren't good, but at least they make sense, mostly. And we can also tell that he's talking about the free market because he's speaking at the Young Americas Foundation, which mostly spreads free market propaganda to children. So now we understand this half of what he was talking about. Now we just need to understand what he meant by collectivism, because regular collectivism, in which the group is deemed more important than the individual, does not fit his description. So this may be a second case of him using a wrong word. Let's have a look at some of the things he talked about. Apparently, collectivism says that humans suffer because the Judeo-Christian system expects so much. But remember, when he says Judeo-Christian, he means free market, and we don't yet know what he means when he says collectivism. So a better way of putting it would be to say that the system we want to name says that humans suffer because the free market capitalist system expects too much of them. And if we continue that for the other quotes, we learn that the system thinks differently from free market capitalism, that it expects you to give up individual striving. Now, I'm not 100% certain what he means by individual striving and struggling, but I would assume he means the classic capitalist struggle of survival in a cold-hearted late-stage capitalist economy, the struggle of the individual trying to make it. Like, we also learned that the system wants no more striving or struggling, that it wants us to trade individual responsibility for collective power, that it says that individual virtue isn't natural and that a nanny state should do it. Now, it's pretty obvious what Ben means by all of that. A system which thinks capitalism is bad and which seeks to abolish the capitalist struggle for survival. He's talking about socialism, specifically a form of socialism that has a strong emphasis on the state, considering he seems to think that this collectivism relies on a so-called nanny state. My assumption is that Ben has no clue that socialist systems without a strong state exist as well, so he assumes socialism is always like the Soviet Union or Maoist China. So if we break through Ben's inability to use the correct words, we can see that it's Ben listing features of his beloved free market capitalism and the evil socialism. Curiously, he doesn't tell us which one is better. He just says capitalism demands you struggle and socialism doesn't demand you struggle. He doesn't make any moral comment about which one is better. Personally, I prefer not to struggle, so maybe Ben is a socialist. As I mentioned before, there's no argument in here. He just explains two things and that's it. He doesn't really explain them accurately either. We assume that the capitalism is the good thing because he calls it Judeo-Christian, which is maybe intended to imply that God wants capitalism and it's therefore good. If you've actually read the Bible, you know that God and Jesus are very critical of wealth and free markets. So that's a failed argument, or like implication, because there's no argument in here. So I guess the best way to explain this video is that he's preaching to the silent, just explaining something to people who already know what they believe. So his audience can naturally nod along to his words without realizing that he didn't say anything at all, that he brought forth no new information, that he made no arguments, that he brought forth no moral judgment. He just didn't do anything there. And he most definitely didn't destroy anything, and extra most definitely not Karl Marx, because there is no connection between what he said and what Marx said at all. So really, this is it. I don't have anything else to say. There are no arguments here which I could debunk, no things I could refute, so that's it. Which begs the question, why did I bother making a video about that? I didn't really teach anyone anything new. I didn't get an opportunity to discuss a rare topic. Like, what's the point? Just to have fun? To a certain extent, yes. But there is another reason I made this video, and that's the fact that I made a video on this Ben Shapiro video before, and that was my very first video uploaded exactly 1 year ago. This is the 1 year celebration of my very first upload. You can have a look at the original video, link in the description. I took it offline because it didn't meet my current quality standards. Be warned, the mic is bad and there was no script. I was making it up as I was going on, and it's a lot shorter than this one. And reading that description tells you the story of how I got to make YouTube videos in the first place. Like, it says, subscribe and I may upload another video, maybe, one day. Like, I clearly didn't intend to make a lot of videos, and at the time, I was big into making leftist memes on r/Dankleft. I'm still a moderator over there, interestingly enough, even though I haven't posted in months. Like, the next line says, I won't upload much if nobody watches this, which is what I anticipated. I expected to get 1,000 views or so. Instead I got 3,000 views and 600 subscribers instantly. That was because it was well received on r/breadtube. Which is why the next line says, edit. Okay, I guess I have to keep going now. Which is what I've been doing. I've, for the most part, kept up my upload schedule of 1 video a week. My content changed a lot, and so did my popularity. I'm at 17,000 subscribers now, which is a lot. Like, I've never really comprehended how many people that is. Like, on YouTube, we're used to hundreds of thousands or millions of subscribers, but uploading for 17,000 people already gives me enough anxiety. Like, what if everyone hates my next video? Like, I have to wonder how anyone with 1 million subscribers uploads anything. Like, you're at the risk of upsetting 1 million people's expectations. How are you not afraid of being cancelled for saying something wrong? Also, my cancelling will happen on the 28th of November 2021. Remember this prophecy. I know it's cliche to say, but I'm really thankful for the way my time on YouTube has worked out so far. Like, all of my videos are at least 90% liked, which means a lot, and the comments are usually about 90% positive as well. So I'm having a good time on YouTube. I don't intend on quitting. However, as I mentioned in a community post, my health has been better before, so there may be less stuff in the near future. I don't know yet. My motivation is pretty random right now. I'll do my best. I hope you understand, and subscribe anyway. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I would like to thank my patrons for dispensing motivation in the form of American currency. I would like to especially thank Darius the Bird, Noah, Aaron J. Patton, Hikaru, Herdington Gurdington, Janarchist77, Joy, I'm so sorry for pronouncing your name wrong last time, Morally Conflicted Tortoise, Tyler Dang, Klastrup, and Spear for your generous donations.